Matthew 10:34 to 11:1. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Now when Jesus had finished instructing his 12 apostles, he went on from there to teach and to proclaim his message in their cities. We have to remember that the Gospels were written after the death and resurrection and ascension of Jesus, and these were written for the early Christian communities. So typically, this passage of the Gospel refers to those who will or who have decided to follow the way of Jesus, and the rest of their family does not. So typically, the way this is interpreted is that if you decide to follow Jesus, it may put you at odds with your own family, your father, your mother, your in-laws. And from there, it's an instruction to go forward and do what you need to do to follow the way of Jesus. I would like to turn this around, however, and instead of taking this interpretation of the scripture, I would like to take it from a completely different point of view. And once I spell it out, you will see that there's a great deal of relationship between what we know psychologically and spiritually from the various avatars that we've had throughout history, from Buddha to Lao Tzu to Muhammad to Jesus. And you will find that all of them come down to the same or basic truth. So all the avatars throughout history, Buddha, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Jesus, they all have a basic tenet and something that they all believe in, and you find it actually in this part of Scripture. I'd like to put together the two sentences here. One that says, those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Put that together with the very first sentence, do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. If you put these two phrases together, you will get the essence of this part of the scripture. Something has to be lost, and more than lost, it actually has to die. Now, if we look at this again from the point of view of an individual, meaning there is something in us that's at odds with something else. And what Jesus is saying, in order to follow him, we have to give up one of them. And the one that we have to get rid of is the ego. So if we divide ourselves between ego and self, the ego being the self-centered part of us, and the self being the spark of divinity that's in the depths of the soul, then these two are at odds. In fact, the ego clings desperately to the things of this world. That's why Jesus is saying, if you don't lose this, if you don't let it go, you will not have life, because life is for the self. It's the spark of divinity in you that has to grow. How can it grow if your ego is clinging to things like, I need to feel good about myself. I need to be right. I need to feel important. I need to be basically loved. And we cannot stand the point of rejection. The ego cannot stand rejection. Yes, we are meant to be loved, but we can only be loved if we are in the life portion of ourself, which is the self, which is the spark of divinity in our soul. So yes, Jesus brought a sword, and he's saying, yes, the ego part of us has to be stripped away. Most of us think of have to be stripped away as, oh well, following the commandments, don't steal anything from anybody, don't gossip about people, and we always take this very much for granted, and we know that's very self-centered, or being jealous, etc. But there's something much more hidden that's almost difficult to find unless it's pointed out to most of us, which is we want to feel good about ourselves. And when we service others, we don't realize we just want to feel good about ourselves. And many people go to disastrous areas and they want to help. Here's the tricky part. Is the desire to help stronger than the desire to feel good about myself? And you will only know this at the moment when you don't feel good about yourself. You're doing something and people aren't grateful, or they push you away, or they reject your good intentions. And then you realize, well, it isn't worth it. Once you get to that point, then you will know that the motivation was actually to feel good. And when you don't feel good about it anymore, then you don't want to do it. True service is, and true giving is, from that positive side of ourselves, does not depend on whether it's acknowledged and whether we feel good about ourselves, or whether people even admire us or even thank us. They may not even thank us. Number 2, and this is very typical for Filipino families. It says here, I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. One of our problems in the Philippines is that the family has a very tight bond. It's a good and it's a bad thing. The tight bond in the Filipino family is extraordinarily valuable. But sometimes the motivation behind that tight bond is a codependency, and that's not a good thing, because we depend too much on the other person for our identity. And if our identity depends too much on the other person, then we are at that phrase, those who find their life will lose it, but those who lose their life for my sake will find it. We have to lose our life. In other words, that part of our life where we're looking for recognition from our family, when we have to be accepted by our family, when our identity depends upon the family, if that's where we are, then we cannot have the happiness about which Jesus is speaking and the type of peace that Jesus wants to give. Those who lose their life, in other words, if I'm willing to let go of acceptance, especially by my family, if I can get my identity apart from my family, I will still love them, I will still support them, but I don't get my identity from them, then I will find life. So if we put the two thoughts together, then we will find that in Jesus' path, he says, if you do a small thing, give a cup of cold water to somebody, that's all you need to do to follow the path of Jesus. If you give a cup of water to somebody else, and it says, in the name of the disciple, and in other versions it says, if you do this for me, if you do it because you see Jesus in the person. And Jesus basically means the essence of life, the God life in each of us. Who is Jesus? Jesus is the incarnation of the divinity in this world. Every time we do something that shows the divinity of God in this world, we are Jesus. It's very simple. And that's why when we are a spark of the divinity, when the divinity in us grows and God's presence becomes clear and obvious in our actions, that is Jesus again being born. And that's why he says, if you do this in my name, in other words, you're not doing it in your name, you're not giving this cup of water so you feel good. Oh my goodness, I gave something to somebody else and now they feel good. I went to the poor and I gave them food, now I feel good. It's not about that. It's about being the incarnation of divinity in this world through my actions. And then God in the other person will also emerge from our actions. I have come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword. I have come to split in half and make you give up your ego so that your life, God's life in you, which is the true self in you, can come to life.